Well, as the popularity of podcasts surge and the audience for some legacy media outlets wanes, the space for partnership between the two is both promising and varied. Here to tell us about some of those opportunities, we are talking to Badr Milligan, co-founder of Jax Podcasters United. Good morning, Badr.
Hey, good morning.
Also, Blythe Milligan, the other co-founder of Jax Podcasters United. Good morning, Blythe.
Thank you for having us.
And we're joined by Letisha Bereola. She is director of podcasting here at WJCT Public Media. Hi, Letisha.
Hi, Ann.
Nice to share a mic with you here. So we know that there are people under 34 are consuming podcasts at a huge rate. About 66% of them listening to one at least once a month, and that's a valuable audience for traditional media. Can you talk a little bit about how you're structuring this podcast boot camp around the idea of finding a partnership space there?
Sure. So it really is a half-day workshop for both new podcasters and veteran podcasters alike. For a lot of podcasters, it can be lonely at times creating shows. And so we really create these events to facilitate those in-person conversations. But then some are still left wondering, what does that next step look like? What does instant credibility look like? And what does, an increased audience size look like? And that's really forming those partnerships with local media as well as podcasters. And so then that way they can kind of feed off of each other and be that resource to local media and vice versa, and really gain that credibility aspect and notoriety.
And you and Badr are both podcasters. You do multiple podcasts even, but how have the lessons that you've learned doing what you do? How do you kind of communicate those? What are some of the big ones that you like to let people know about?
We typically get the biggest questions are around marketing and making money, because for a lot of shows, I think more than 90% of all shows never make it past 10 episodes. And so for a lot of folks, they're wondering, how do I get more than my grandma to listen to a show? How do I, just direct audience members? How do I gain more audience and then thus make money off of that show? And so those are we kind of try to help folks cut to the chase with the lessons that we've learned and what kind of revenue models work for what audience size. And the answer is different for every show. I come from a sports and entertainment background, but I didn't really make a whole heck of a lot of money podcasting in that realm because there's so much supply. Now, on the flip side, on the logistics side of things, I have a logistics-focused podcast, and that audience is naturally smaller, but the level of the executive that's listening to a show like that is going to spend a little bit more. And so helping the audience or helping other podcasters understand the differences between what that download or what that view means for their show, and it could be different depending on the market that you're in.
Letisha, I want to ask you about kind of what WJCT's interest is in this. You are director of podcasting. You've been really stepping up the station's podcasting game. There's a new studio here that is beautiful and has all the bells and whistles that people can use. But what do you see as a partnership between kind of this disparate community of podcasters and what the station here is focused on?
Yeah, so I have been here as director of podcasting for about a year now. And one of the first things I wanted to tackle was sort of the gap between WJCT Public Media and this creative audio video now podcasting community, because we are a legacy station. We are the experts in broadcast and audio. And I wanted to reach out and say, how can we collaborate? How can we support what you're doing as a community, public media station? And so obviously Badr and Blythe were my first people to they are the leaders in this community. And out of this relationship between us, the first sort of request was, what do you think about hosting this workshop? And so the idea is that they get to see WJCT in a new light. Hundreds of people are in this building all the time, right, for events. And so now I want them to see us as we can also be a resource for your podcast needs, whether it's our podcast services, our podcast studio, we do consulting, we do full-blown production for people, and really just be like, how can we help our community more? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Badr, what do you think? I know that this podcast boot camp appeals to novices and people with more experience. So you've kind of got a couple of tracks, but is this for people who are interested in platforming podcasts as well, or is it mostly for people producing podcasts?
I think it's a good combination of both, but it definitely leans towards the practitioners, right? The folks that are putting out a show, maybe aspiring to put out a podcast, start their own, but also the intermediates, the folks that have been doing it maybe for 2 to 5 years. They're looking to level up their game, whether that be, how do I reach more people? How do I get more downloads? All right, where do I go from here? I've got 50 episodes in the can. I want to start making, some money. I want to start, exploring different opportunities, all the way up to the seasoned folks as well. And I think that's one thing that we enjoy about the JPU is just the range of talent that we have, from the different type of podcast creators that dabble in, whether it be sports or different genres, to podcast services and businesses that are that we count among our podcast community. We were having a conversation before we got started that it just makes so much sense that something like the Jax Podcasters United group is here in Jax, considering the amount of talented podcasters, the different podcast businesses and services. And I think that's our goal with the podcast camp, is to bring all of that together underneath one roof and share resources and education, whether, regarding, whether your status of, a newbie aspiring season.
Right. Well, the event is Thursday. It's 1 to 5 p.m. It's here at WJCT Studios, free parking, just RSVP. You can go to jaxpodcastersunited.com. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All